The United States has formally charged jailed gangster Lawrence Bishnoi and his close aide Satinderjeet Singh, better known as Goldy Brar, with orchestrating the 2023 assassination of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. It is an allegation that revives one of the most contentious episodes in the India-Canada relations. But is Operation Hardball simply a massive crackdown on transnational organized crime, or is it something more? As India and the US inch towards a crucial trade agreement, Washington has unveiled sweeping indictments alleging that notorious gangs are operating from Indian jails. Is it a coincidence or calculated timing? Is the US using law enforcement, diplomacy, and public pressure to strengthen its negotiating position before a trade deal is signed? In today's episode, we discuss the facts, the timing, and the questions that New Delhi and Washington are unlikely to answer publicly. According to a federal indictment, Bishnoi and Brar allegedly planned and directed the killing of Nijjar, who was shot dead outside a Sikh Gurudwara in Surrey, British Columbia on June 18, 2023. The indictment claims that although Bishnoi has been lodged in an Indian prison for years, he continued to run his criminal network from inside his jail cell using smuggled mobile phones and internet-based communication devices. Investigators allege that he supplied a co-conspirator with Nijjar's photograph and several residential addresses to facilitate the assassination. Goldy Brar, described as Bishnoi's childhood friend, is accused of supervising the gang's operations across northern America. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police said today that authorities in Canada found no evidence of linking Indian government officials to the killing of Sikh separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. But one point in the indictment deserves attention. The US document does not allege that the government of India played any role in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, nor did First Assistant US Attorney Bill Israeli or any other American official claim at the press conference that the Indian authorities were involved or even aware of the operation. However, the indictment repeatedly states that the alleged conspiracy was directed by Bishnoi while he was operating from an Indian prison. This raises an obvious question. Is the United States alleging that Bishnoi and Brar carried out the operation with the Indian government's knowledge? But the charges against Bishnoi and Brar are only one part of a much larger investigation. American and Canadian law enforcement agencies have jointly uncovered what they describe as a vast transnational organized crime network operating across multiple continents. In total, 37 individuals have been charged through 3 separate federal indictments filed in US courts. Among those named are Lawrence Bishnoi, Goldy Brar, Rohit Gudara, Jaggu Bhagwanpuria, Ravindra Singh Dhanda, and several other alleged members of the organized criminal syndicates. According to American investigators, these organizations are far more than local gangs operating within India. The networks allegedly extend across the US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, with operations ranging from contract killing and extortions to narcotics trafficking, arms smuggling, kidnapping, human trafficking, and money laundering. Investigators say members of the Indian diaspora in these countries were often among their primary targets. The investigation, named Operation Hardball, was a culmination of a years-long probe led by US Department of Justice into Indian organized crime groups that, according to investigators, engage in racketeering, targeted killing, shooting, extortion, the trafficking of bulk quantities of narcotics across international borders, along with several other serious crimes whose impact has been felt particularly within overseas Indian communities. The scale of the operation itself was significant. Authorities seized nearly 100 kilograms of cocaine, 1 kg of heroin, around $40,000 in cash, and 12 firearms. Simultaneously, raids were also conducted across 23 locations in the Sacramento area and another 11 locations in Los Angeles. The indictment paints Lawrence Bishnoi not merely as a jailed gangster but as the alleged head of a sophisticated international criminal enterprise. The investigation also identifies 3 major criminal organizations operating within this network: The first is the Bishnoi enterprise, allegedly led by Lawrence Bishnoi. The second is the Bhagwanpuria enterprise, allegedly controlled by Jaggu Bhagwanpuria, who is incarcerated in Punjab. The third is the Dhanda group, headed by Ravindra Singh Dhanda from Canada. Together, these organizations face charges including racketeering, conspiracy, murder for hire, narcotics trafficking, firearms offences, and large-scale extortion. But perhaps one of the most disturbing revelations emerging from the investigation concerns allegations of official corruption within India's law enforcement system. The FBI has directly implicated Gurinderjeet Singh Nijjar, the station house officer of Tanda Police Station in Punjab's Hoshiarpur district, accusing him of collaborating with members of the Jaggu Bhagwanpuria organized crime group. According to the federal indictments, Nijjar allegedly helped gang members extort nearly $4 lakh from a family in Los Angeles by threatening to implicate their relatives in India in fabricated murder cases. The indictment further alleges that members of the Bhagwanpuria organization had corrupted law enforcement officers in India and partnered with corrupt government officials to facilitate extortion operations and register false criminal cases against individuals they targeted. While Nijjar has denied any knowledge of why he was named in the American indictment, Punjab police has initiated an internal inquiry. He has since then transferred to the police lines in Hoshiarpur. According to the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Jalandhar Range, the Superintendent of Police, Jalandhar Rural, has been tasked with investigating the allegations and submitting a detailed report. Reports say that the US will be seeking the extradition of Lawrence Bishnoi, Jaggu Bhagwanpuria, and also Gurinderjeet Singh, the SHO of Tanda Police Station in Punjab's Hoshiarpur district, who are lodged in Indian jails and allegedly running extortion rackets and ordering murders from within jails. But perhaps the bigger question is not just what Operation Hardball alleges, but what it has surfaced. The timing is difficult to ignore. India and the US have been negotiating a bilateral trade agreement for a very long time now. Yet, despite repeated round of talks, the negotiations remain inconclusive, with both sides continuing to differ on several key issues. On June 20, Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal sought to reassure that progress was being made. He said discussions with Washington are now focused on creating a framework that gives India a competitive edge over peers. He further added, "We cannot enter a deal with the US until the framework of having a competitive advantage is finalized." While expressing confidence that India and the US are very close to finalizing a trade deal, yet weeks later there is no agreement. And it is important to remember that two countries are not even negotiating the final comprehensive pact at this stage. The discussions are only over an interim trade agreement. If even the first phase continues to remain stuck, it reflects that significant differences still exist between New Delhi and Washington. Against this backdrop comes Operation Hardball, a sweeping American indictment drawing global attention to allegations linked to an Indian prison system from where organized crime network operates. Is the timing merely a coincidence, or is Washington increasing pressure on New Delhi at a time when trade negotiations have reached a crucial stage? That is a question worth asking. Before we jump to conclusions, let me quickly walk you through a few developments from the past several weeks that clearly suggests that the India-US trade negotiations are far from smooth. In fact, the headlines indicate that both New Delhi and Washington are trying to project themselves as tough negotiators, each unwilling to blink first as they push for a trade agreement that serves their own national interests. In May, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited India with the goal of resetting bilateral ties after US President Donald Trump's tariff measures had strained relations early in his term and to push forward negotiations on a trade deal. On June 8, 2026, the United States imposed a 12.5% tariffs on certain Indian imports, alleging that India's enforcement against forced labor was inadequate. A day later, on June 9, India froze the approvals required for Starlink to begin operations in the country, citing security concerns. Now India has formally asked the United States to reconsider the 12.5% tariffs imposed on June 8. Then on June 17, 2026, the Trump administration removed the Indo from the Indo-Pacific, which triggered several reactions in India and questioned the strategic partnership between India and the US. Later in the same month on June 27, Rubio struck an optimistic tone saying relations between the two countries were fantastic and that trade negotiations were in their final stages. And then there was another episode very similar to Operation Hardball episode where an Indian national pleaded guilty in the murder plot of another Khalistani leader, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. In February, 54-year-old Nikhil Gupta admitted to charges of murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. His verdict is currently being postponed. According to US prosecutors, the alleged target was Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, an American citizen and a prominent supporter of the Khalistan movement, which advocated for a separate Sikh homeland in India. Announcing the development, US Attorney J. Clayton said Gupta had conspired to kill an American citizen on US soil because of his exercise of free speech. He added that Gupta believed he could carry out the crime from abroad without facing consequences but would now be held accountable under the US law. Coming to the current development, whether Operation Hardball is purely about law enforcement or part of a larger strategy is something only time will tell. For now, the questions remain, and so does the speculation. As India and the United States continue their trade negotiations, it will be interesting to see how this story unfolds. That's all for this report. Till I see you next time. Thanks for watching.